The Rising Damp is here at 10:30 after strong language, nudity and flash photography. Joan Collins Uncut, Piers Morgan's life stories.
Of all the people I've interviewed, I would say that Joan Collins has the greatest story. She was a Hollywood superstar in the 50s and 60s. She's had 5 husbands. Joan Collins is the world's most famous TV bitch.
Nervous? Why? What was there to be nervous about? I figure I can handle him. I've made interviewers cry before this. Maybe Piers should be nervous about me.
Now, Joan, I want to start with a confession. Do you want to hear this?
How dirty is it?
It's not that bad, but it's just that for the last 30 years,
Yes.
I have been slightly in love with you.
Oh, no.
It's true.
Are you kidding?
Well, when I was in my sort of mid to late teens,
Yes.
you were Dynasty, and that was my life, was watching you once a week and just feeling very strange feelings, which a teenage boy really shouldn't be feeling.
I got the feeling I know what you're talking about, even though I've never been a teenage boy.
You look incredible. I mean, when I
you.
remember you on Dynasty, this is how I remember you. It's
Really?
like age has not withered you.
Well, I'm lucky. You know, it's not me, it's my mother and my father and grandmother and all of them. And, of course, I then, you know, worked on it, as one does.
Did you come from that kind of old showbiz school of you must always look like a star if you're going to be a star?
Well, you should have seen me this morning at about 10:30. I took my 11-year-old granddaughter to a big department store on Oxford Street with absolutely no makeup on, with the hat that Tommy Lee Jones wears in The Fugitive, you know, one of those hats that go like that, and a big old overcoat, and we went shopping to buy her some clothes. So, no, I don't always look like this.
I can't even imagine seeing you like that.
I know, you wouldn't, but the taxi driver recognised me. Hello, Joan. I said, I'm not supposed to recognise me.
How important is it, though, do you think, to be, if you are a proper star, a proper movie star, that's your trade, to look the part when you meet the public?
Well, I don't think that today movie stars or actors and actresses don't really care about that at all. In fact, they're accepted much more as being, you know, really serious actors if they don't get their hair done and put their makeup on and look groomed, which is I call groomed, when they go out. But I was brought up like that. My mother was like that, my aunts, I had many aunts, 10 or 11, and my grandmothers, and that's what I like to do, and I still like to do it. And I think how you look is a reflection of how you feel about yourself, and I feel really good about myself. I'm very happy in my skin. I think I was born with a happy gene, actually, which is, I'm very lucky, I do have that. And I think that I always want to not disappoint the public. I think if I came down here in baggy old blue jeans and a stained T-shirt, they wouldn't really like it, would you? No?
It's quite interesting, though. It's a definite trend, isn't it, in the modern-day celebrity, particularly the women, where someone said to me the other day, which female movie stars do you fancy? And I actually struggled a bit, because they so pride themselves on looking dowdy most of the time.
I know. It's absolutely unbelievable. When I saw some of them when I'm out and about, it's amazing how they look. But I did see Sandra Bullock the other day at a party that was given for her in New York, and she looked adorable. She was wearing a similar dress to this, actually, and she just looked fabulous. So some of them do. But I think the thing that I find really weird about a lot of actresses today, really, is that they don't know how to do it themselves. They don't know how to put their makeup on. They don't know how to do their hair. They don't know how to dress. That's why they all look so great on the red carpet, because they've got stylists. I've never had a stylist in my life.
Seriously?
I do everything. No.
You do all this, do you?
I do it myself.
I mean, to get you from where you were this morning,
well,
to get from
true.
that to this,
yes.
How long is that procedure?
When Percy and I get ready to go out, like in the morning, he takes exactly the same time to shave as I do to put my makeup on.
Really?
So that's an example, yes.
Does he take a long time to shave?
No! No. Well, how long does it take you to shave?
I don't know, about probably 5, 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly how long it takes for me to put my makeup on during the day. Tonight, of course, you know, I'd put some eyelashes on and, you know, want to look extra good for you. So, and I do it carefully, because the camera never lies. So it probably took 40 minutes. Yeah.
Now, Percy, obviously, is your 5th husband, and we're going to
Yes.
come to the other 4, obviously, as time goes on. Staying at the moment with number 5, and obviously the last.
Absolutely.
Is he honest with you, Percy? I mean, a lot of women will look at you and think, "God, so glamorous, so impossibly beautiful." But do you have moments when Percy has to say, you know, "You don't look great today, Joan"?
No, he doesn't do that because he loves me. It's me, Joan, and he doesn't care. He loves it if I look pretty and my hair is done and I wear a really nice dress. Yeah, he likes that. But if I'm in my pajamas and my ancient bathrobe, he loves me because he loves me. And the same thing with him. If he hasn't shaved for 2 days, it doesn't matter. If you love somebody, I don't think the exterior is important after a while. I think it's very important in the beginning because that's what attracts you to somebody, obviously. And so we just, you know, we just hang out together and chill out, and I sit around in my sweats. You don't believe I have sweats, do you?
No, I don't. I don't want to believe it.
Yeah, I just
I
don't
don't want to
have
believe it. I just see
don't
you,
know,
you
right.
know, I'm just seeing Alexis.
All right, well,
That's
I'll
all I'm
invite you
saying.
over once. I'm not Alexis. That finished 20 years ago.
Well, you look like her. You haven't
Well, it's
aged
my
at all.
face. I know. Well, that's because I haven't done all those things to it like those ladies do.
Have you not, really?
No, I really haven't. That's why I look the way I do.
You've never had any plastic surgery?
No, none. I'd rather just grow old gracefully. Well, fighting all the way. I have always, always, always used makeup and kept my face out of the sun since I was 20.
I read that. You've literally not had your face in the sun.
No, but the rest, yes. I mean, everything
but not
else.
your face, seriously.
Haven't you seen pictures of me in the south?
I know you always have these huge hats, yeah, and scars
the
everywhere, yeah.
glasses, and yeah. No, absolutely. I can't stand it now, having the sun on my face.
But is that your main beauty tip, do you think?
I have quite a few. Do you want to go through them?
Yes.
You've got about 4 hours.
How do you look as good as you did?
Well, I think I think the power of positive thinking is very important. I believe that you look like what you want to look like, and you visualize how you want to look. Now, today I had a fry-up for breakfast. I've just had a tuna fish sandwich and a glass of wine backstage.
Hollywood actresses watching this in horror. You had a fry-up?
Yes.
Well, a sausage can kill you.
Not me.
Hollywood, they do
I
that.
fry on sausages. Yes.
Do you not care about things like
Yes.
diet and having a drink and so on?
Of course I do, but I don't eat junk. This is probably the first fry-up sausage that I've had for about 2 months. But, you know, I've been in America, so I thought, back in England, have a sausage. That's what we specialize in. But I do watch my weight. I have to watch my weight. I'm at least 10 pounds more than I was when I did Alexis. So I'm surprised that you think I still look the same. But after a certain age, after you get to 30, no, not 30, no, 30 is a doddle. 40 is quite easy. You know, you still say, oh, doesn't he look fabulous for 40? That's easy. Wait until you get to 50 or 60. That's when it gets difficult because you need half as many calories, really, as when you were in your 20s. So I just eat very carefully. First of all, I don't like meat. And I don't really like fish. I like mashed potatoes, and I like pasta, and I'm just quite careful.
Do you feel more pressure as you get older to maintain this beauty?
Not really, because I figured that once I passed, you know, a certain age, and I look at women older than me, and I have a few friends who are in their late 70s and 80s, and I look at them and I see they haven't changed in 15, 20 years. And I think if you remain the same weight and you take care of your skin so you don't get all jowly and wrinkled, that you can more or less look the same. It's fatal to get too thin. Fatal. I have some friends, and I'm not even going to tell you who they are because you would know them very well, in their 80s that are so thin and so frail. And they're very famous, and it's sad. And they diet to keep that way. I don't believe that one should diet. I don't believe also that one should get too fat, so it's a happy medium. You know what it's like.
Can I be incredibly impertinent?
Yes.
And actually ask you how old you are?
No, I never reveal my age. You know how I Google me. It's on there. I remember one
Can I
thing.
put an age to you?
Yeah.
76.
Yes.
I mean, that is incredible.
Is it?
Don't you think it's incredible?
Well, why aren't you applauding?
So, Joan, I think it's fair to say the one thing that you've never done in your career is toe the line. Joan Collins has been gracing our screens for an incredible 7 decades. She began her career aged just 9, appearing in serious plays, but didn't get the attention she craved until she shot to fame as a teenage pin-up, and later as an on-screen temptress.
What sort of changed her life was that she started being photographed a lot for the papers because she was so pretty.
She became Britain's answer to Marilyn Monroe and worked with Hollywood's biggest stars. Joan's game for anything attitude and refusal to act her age made her a risk-taker and saw her strip off in her mid-40s in the film The Stud. And then again a few years later for a men's magazine.
There is nothing average about my mother appearing at 49 in Playboy.
Just as I didn't
But the role which will forever define Joan is that of Dynasty super bitch Alexis Colby. And she's become just as famous for her off-screen put-downs.
She can be cutting and acerbic, but is usually very funny.
Being on the receiving end of the wit can sometimes be a little deflating.
We were sitting at some awards thing, and in front of us was Elizabeth Taylor. She had very big hair. And Joan said, "Oh, really, Elizabeth Taylor, the fatter she gets, the bigger her hair gets."
While some of her fellow actresses are collecting their pensions, Joan remains an age-defying sex symbol.
I've never seen anybody with such amazing legs. When we were working together, I couldn't stop staring at them. She's got the most perfect legs.
Well, growing up with an international sex symbol as a mum, I don't recommend it.
When you get a screen goddess like Joan, they never seem to age. They seem to have some kind of magic elixir.
I think she is almost part extraterrestrial.
For me, she defines glamour. She is the last glamour puss.
Somebody once said that she passed 100 recently, but I do not believe that. And I thought, well, with her, anything's possible, because that's Joan.
Obviously, it slightly rankles with you that people like me still bang on about, you know, Alexis from all that time ago.
Well, no, I think whatever I played, even if I'd played the milkmaid, after 20 years, you would like to perhaps be thought of that you can do something else. And I think Henry Winkler, who played the Fonz in Happy Days, he told me that when he finished doing that show, he said he probably thought that for 3 or 4 years they would still say, "Hi, it's the Fonz." But of course he doesn't look like the Fonz anymore. But I still look the same, more or less. So I am still identified with that role. I loved doing it. It was great, great fun to do, even though it was a pretty miserable personal time in my life. And I don't regret any of it. It would just be nice sometimes to not always be called Alexis.
I love this quote. You once said that you'd never slept with a man over the age of 42.
Did I? My husband's 44.
He's precisely 44?
Yes.
He's not really a toy boy anymore, is he?
Oh, stop. That is the most disgusting expression. How old are
think so?
you? How
I'm
old-
44.
You're 44?
Right in your target range.
Okay, cut over. And you're an Aries,
I'm an Aries.
so you'll be 45.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
That's
but
a
there's still time.
milestone, yeah. What do they call it? What happens then? You have midlife crisis.
Probably.
No, but it comes
I'm
later
ready to
now,
have mine
pretty
with
sure.
you, if you are. Come on, number 6.
Did you talk like this with Scylla?
No.
With Gordon?
Yes.
It would have been unthinkable to have had a child. This is the 60s, and it would have been absolute career death.
Let me take you right back to where it all started. You were born Joan Henrietta Collins.
Yes,
In London, to your
Yes.
mum Elsa and dad Joe.
yes.
It was said in your family to show over-affection was a sign of weakness. Is that a fair reflection, do you think?
Not from my mother, no.
From your
Not
dad?
at- oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, you know, my father, he was born in, I think, 1906. So basically, he was from a family of Victorians, and those people thought that children should be seen and not heard.
It was Sister Jackie
Yes.
and a brother William.
Yeah.
Did your relationship with your father change after they were born?
No. My relationship with my father was always kind of hands-off. He was a man who did what he wanted to do. He was the boss. He was very much L30, you know, come in and have what he did, everything that he wanted. I suppose that when you look at these pictures now, he was pretty loving to me then. But then I guess when Jackie was born, which is 4 or 5 years later, that maybe the affection was transferred to him, to her.
Mm. Did he ever praise you?
No. When I was voted when I was 18, and I was voted the most beautiful girl in England by the Photographers Association of something, and they called Daddy up to say, your daughter's just been named this fabulous, what do you think? He said, I'm amazed. Well, she's a nice-looking girl, but nothing special. Yeah, we would not... I said, if I had been praised more, probably, I would have run the world. No, but I would have probably done a lot better.
Do you think so?
Yes, but I think that both Jackie and I have done incredibly well.
I was going to say, you haven't done badly.
No, we've done really well. I'm not complaining, believe me. But you were talking about the family situation.
Yeah, I mean, do you think you would have done better with men, perhaps, if your father had been more loving towards you? You ever thought of that?
No, I'm not very analytical, you see. You can analyse me. Go on.
Well, let me put it to you. That
Yes.
your dad wasn't that loving towards you.
Yes.
And that perhaps you were then chasing the security and love from a man that you never got from him.
Well, I don't really know. I haven't really thought that way. I mean, I got married the first time when I was just 18 because I was the virgin, and that's what you did in those days. And also, he was my favourite movie star and all of that.
So in your late teens, you're now a stunner and you're about to launch yourself onto the world. The first of Joan's 5 husbands was actor Maxwell Reed, 14 years her senior, who she married when she was just 19.
It's because she'd been to bed with him. And in those days, her mother had said, if you ever give yourself to a man, you must then do the decent thing. And Joan had, and she did.
Joan found herself in an abusive relationship. But after fighting back and divorcing Reed, she made an audacious bid for Hollywood stardom. She was still in her early 20s.
21, for any actor or actress to go to Hollywood, is young. Absolutely, because usually you try and establish yourself in your own country first of all.
She took over from Marilyn Monroe in Girl on the Red Velvet Swing, and so she knew Hollywood in its heyday.
But Joan soon discovered a darker side to Hollywood.
She immediately ran up against the old guard of all those, you know, those producers, which they really controlled the town, and the casting couch was very much intact at that time. But she refused to go that route. I mean, there were a couple of big, heavy producers who said, the only way in is, you know, if you come and see me in the back room. And she said, I'm not going to do that.
Joan may have snubbed the Hollywood casting couch, but she was more receptive to its leading men and had a string of lovers.
Suddenly, this gorgeous-looking British actress arrives in town, and she had lots of famous boyfriends along the way.
She was on the arm of every eligible actor bachelor in town.
One Hollywood heartthrob who caught her eye and captured her heart was Warren Beatty, the man every woman wanted to be with.
She talks a lot about Warren because I think they had the deepest, longest relationship.
I'm sure that she made the kind of mistakes and had the kind of innocence that any woman does in an industry which is that voracious.
She knows.
I mean, Joan, you were quite a naughty girl, weren't you?
Compared to the girls of today, absolutely not.
Really?
No. I was what you call a serial monogamist. I mean, after I divorced Maxwell Reed, and I was in Hollywood by that time. I was with Sidney Chaplin for over a year, then I was with Arthur Lowe for over a year, then I was with George England for about a year, and then I met Warren, and we were together for a year and a half, by which time I was 50. No.
I mean, looking at you two there, you were Burton and Taylor, but better looking,
Yeah.
weren't you?
I don't know about better looking.
When did you first meet him?
I first met him at La Scala, a restaurant in, which you know, in LA, and I was having dinner with my agent and his wife, Mort Weiner, and he was having dinner with Jane Fonda and somebody else, and he kept on looking over at me, and the guy said, "That's Warren Beatty, who's Shirley MacLaine's younger brother. He's just come out to Hollywood to try and become a star." I said, "Oh, really?" You know, I wasn't terribly interested. And when I got home, he'd called me. He'd found out my number. And he said, would I go out? And I said, no, I don't know you, blah, blah. We had a bit of a conversation. He's a good talker on the phone. He gives great telephone.
I bet he does.
And, and then a few days later, I went to a party, and he was playing the piano, and he plays the piano very well. And
so you're now thinking, this guy's quite interesting, actually.
Yes, and I was in the middle of a relationship with a married man, which is the only time I've ever been in a relationship with a married man. I do not recommend it, girls. It is terrible. Married men, hateful, unless they're married to you, of course. But who was constantly saying that he was separated. And so I was pretty unhappy in this relationship. And then Warren called me and we went out, and that was it. We were together for a year and a half.
What was it like?
What was it like? It was okay. It was fun.
I heard he had, like, an absolutely voracious sexual appetite.
Yes.
Like, off the scale.
Yes. Well, he was 21. I mean, didn't you when you were 21?
Still do.
Yeah, it became a bit boring, actually.
When you say he became a bit boring, this is Warren Beatty, and he was the biggest heartthrob in Hollywood.
He was not an actor then, Piers. He was a wannabe. And that was, yeah, so people say, oh, well, he was so famous. He wasn't. I was the famous one.
So all the rumours about him are true, then?
Yes, well, I don't know now. He's 70-something, isn't he? Yeah. But we saw him the other day. Percy and I were having lunch at the Polo Lounge, and he came in and sat with us and was, you know, charming and funny, and as he always is, and he's always got a deal going.
And at the end, when he said to you, I must give you a call, Joe, does Percy not think, that's still Warren Beatty, I better be careful here?
No, because he doesn't look like he did then, you know, unfortunately. You want to show a picture of him?
We've got plenty of pictures of him.
Why are we talking about him? Talk about me.
Well, it is... well, OK, because he actually... I mean, it wasn't inconsequential, was it? Because he did actually get you pregnant.
No, we were engaged.
Yeah,
and he gave me an engagement ring in a carton of chopped liver.
Really?
Yes. We were living in New York, in an apartment in New York, and he says, I'd like some chopped liver, which we both liked a lot. And so I got out the carton from the fridge, and he said, will you serve it? And so I said, and then there was this engagement ring. And I said, oh, does this mean we're engaged? And he said, yes. And so that was it.
And soon after that, you actually fell pregnant.
Yes, I did.
And then had an abortion.
Yes.
I mean, was that a very sad time for you, or how did you feel? You were very young, obviously.
I wasn't that young. I was in my mid-20s. This was a time, this is the 60s, and it would have been absolute career death for me to have done that. Even though I wasn't yet getting to a broody period. I got to my broody period a couple of years later. But, I mean, it was just, it would have been unthinkable to have had a child. He didn't have any money. I had nothing. And I believe that if you bring a child into the world, that you have to have a responsibility for that child. You have to think, I know I have enough money to send them to school, I have enough money to buy them a house. And even though I had been an actress for, 8 years, I hadn't made any money. It had all gone on traveling, and you didn't make that much money then. So, yes, I did. We went to some place in New Jersey, and I did it. But like I do everything in life, I did, okay, that's it. Close the book, over the next, you know, period of my life.
And can you actually move on, or do you,
yes,
do you sometimes
I can move
think
on.
back?
I read these articles about women in magazines. Oh, I'm still brooding for the baby that I aborted. I didn't, because a year and a half later, I had Tara, you know, and I'm so happy that she was my first child, because I love her dearly, and it would not have been the same had I had another child. So I know I made the right decision. I was stupid. I was an idiot. I have made mistakes, but, show me a person who hasn't made a mistake, and I'll show you a person who hasn't lived properly.
Take you to your first husband, who you mentioned earlier, Maxwell Reed.
Must we?
Well, he sounds an absolutely ghastly piece of work, if you don't mind me saying.
What can I say? I was 18. A girl of 18 at that time is like a girl of 8 today. My 11-year-old granddaughter knows more about life and men than I did at, 17 I was when I met him. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about sex. I knew nothing about procreation. I knew nothing. There were no articles. People find it's like it was the last century, but it is kind of strange. I remember asking my mother once, I was in a train carriage, and I saw this word, this written on the wall of the train carriage, F-U-C-K. And I thought, what does that mean? Because I was always very interested in words. So I went to the library and I looked it up, that word. And it wasn't in any of the dictionaries. So I finally said to my mother, Mummy, what does... And she said, that is the worst word you can possibly use. If I told your father if he would ever use that word, I would divorce him. Never use that word. I said, well, what does it mean? She said, I'm not going to tell you. It's terrible. Well, that was that. So that's how innocent I was. Okay?
And is it true, I think you alluded to this earlier, that you felt you had to marry him because you had done the dreaded deed, you'd had sex with him?
Yes.
You really felt that was...
Yes, I did feel that at the time, yes. Of course, the night before the wedding, I was crying buckets of tears and realising I'd made a terrible mistake. And I went into my father and said, I can't go through with this. I really can't. It's a terrible mistake. I was stupid. I was idiotic. I was stupid. I was an idiot. I was a complete idiot.
What did you say, your father?
He said, I can't, everybody's been invited. You've got to do it. It was horrible. Horrible, horrible relationship. Awful.
He was very abusive to you, wasn't he?
Not physically.
Verbally abusive?
Yes, physically. Nobody's ever physically abused me, because I think they know that they laid one finger on me, I would be out the door forever.
This guy, Maxwell Reed, he threatened to, quote, cut your pretty face.
Yes.
And to try and sell you to an Arab sheikh.
Oh, that? Well, everybody knows about the Arab sheikh.
I didn't know about the Arab sheikh.
Oh, you didn't know about the Arab sheikh? Oh, all right. Well, it sounds funny now, but it was pretty tragic. We'd been married for tottering along for about a year. I had gone off to do 5 plays during the time I was doing movies. I told my agent, get me away from London, whatever you can do. I can't be in London. So I went on tour with this play called The Praying Mantis. I did anything to get away. Anyway, we're sitting at Les Ambassadeurs, and there's this Arab sheikh next door who's kind of talking to Max. And he said, guess what? This man will pay £10,000 for one night with you, and I can even watch. I said, are you serious? He said, yes. He said, think what we can do with £10,000. Now, this is the late 50s. £10,000 then was, I think, probably around 100,000 today, or maybe even more.
At least probably $1 million, yeah.
No, yeah. I said, I can't do that. I can't do that. He said, yes, you can. You can do it. I said, no, I can't. I said, I've got to go downstairs, get my coat. I need to go. Just a minute. I've got a part of my nose. So I went down, got in a taxi, went home to Mummy and Daddy, and that was the end of that. I said, I can't go on with this any longer.
Do you think now you would have dealt with him a lot easier and a lot quicker?
Well, of course. Absolutely. Yes, although I have made mistakes, but, show me a person who hasn't made a mistake and I'll show you a person who hasn't lived properly. That's the way I feel.
We touched in the video there on the infamous casting couch. What was it actually like when you first got to it? Were you shocked, or had you been warned
no,
how
I
bad it
was
was?
shocked. They were doing it in England too. I mean, I had one of the producers when I was doing my first movie, I Believe in You, when I was 17. They used to hide me in the wardrobe, in the wardrobe department, in the cupboards at night, because he was on the prowl for me. I mean, there were so many men and actors too who just would, proposition you, and When I think back, it is just extraordinary how on the make so many guys were with a pretty young girl. But I guess they still are today.
I mean, did you feel pressure to succumb?
Absolutely not. Are you kidding? No way I would succumb. No way. Absolutely not.
But didn't you worry that if that was the system, you wouldn't get the best jobs?
No, because
other actresses must have been succumbing left, right and centre.
Oh, yeah. Well, now, fast forward to Hollywood and Cleopatra, and I did several tests for Cleopatra, and I was promised the role by both the head of the studio and the head of the CEO of 20th Century Fox if I would be nice to them.
Seriously?
And yes, and they did have me in their office, and I was on the dance floor with one of them, and he said, "Wouldn't you like to be the biggest star on the lot?" And I said, "I would love to." And he said, "Well, then all you have to do is be nice to me." He said, "I'm not an unattractive man." He actually wasn't. He was in his, I guess, 50s, and I guess he was pretty good looking, but I'm 22. And so he was, you know, Santa Claus. And he said, "All you have to do is be nice to me." And I said, "But you're married." That's the naivete. And he said, "Oh, and you know, we'll have a little apartment." And it was just
How
really
many
horrible.
of your contemporaries do you think were going along with this?
I think quite a few. I can't, you know. Oh, well, Marilyn Monroe but she was before me, admits that she was passed around like a piece of meat. And I think a lot of the girls were. But I didn't really go into specifics. I was so busy living my own life. I wasn't really interested in gossip and hearing what everybody else was doing. And it was not like today, where everybody's on the internet and gossip magazines and tweetering and twittering and whatever they do, where you knew everything. You didn't really know anything. I wasn't really that interested in gossip.
Do you think the casting couch goes on today?
God, yes. Not with me. I think it does, yes. I don't know specifics. No, I honestly, you have to ask my sister. She's into all that. She's into all that, and she writes about it. But I think it does.
You actually replaced Marilyn Monroe in the film.
Yes, in the Girl
pretty
in the Red
extraordinary thing
Velvet
to have
Swing.
happened. Yeah.
Well, yes, because the girl that I played was supposed to be 17, and a very innocent young girl. You know, beautiful model in New York. And Marilyn was going to play it, and then the studio said she was too old because she was like 30. So I got to play it. It was a fabulous role.
How did you feel when you heard Marilyn Monroe had been kicked out for being too old and you were replacing her?
I thought, that's showbiz.
Did she ever talk to you about it?
No, I only met her once.
What was she like?
Shy, vulnerable, sweet, kind of scruffy, if you can believe it. I met her at Gene Kelly's house, and she was standing at the bar, and she said, you know, they wanted me to play the role in the Girl in the Red Velvet Swing, but I was too old. And I said, really? She said, yeah. She said, but that's okay, because I'm going to study the Actors Studio in New York. And then she said, watch out for the wolves in Hollywood, honey. And I said, well, I can handle wolves, you know, they're everywhere. She said, no, no, no. And she said, particularly watch out for Zanuck, the head of the studio. And Zanuck, Darryl F. Zanuck, and he was like 5'2", and he was the head of the studio, and he pounced on me one day in the corridor, and that was really scary.
Really?
That was a real casting couch thing, yeah. He had girls come in, hot and cold running girls. I rejected him, and I thought, oh, God, now they're going to drop my contract, but they didn't. This was a time when Jane Fonda and Glenda Jackson and Julie Christie were taking off their gear all over the place. Nobody said anything about them doing soft porn.
In 1963, you married Anthony Newley, a fellow actor.
Yes.
Tell me about him.
Well, I think that Tony was a flawed genius. I think he wasn't quite sure in which direction to go, because he was a singer, he was a writer, he was a performer, he did everything, and but he was a tormented soul. He was tormented, and I don't know why, but he was.
Look at you there.
Yeah, that's a pretty good-looking couple. He looks so much like Sasha. My son looks so much like him.
Because you quite quickly had 2 children,
Yes.
Tara and Sasha.
Yes, that's what I wanted. I was getting very broody. This was my late 20s, and I wanted to have children then.
You spoke very movingly in your book about when your mother was dying, that she said to you her great wish was that you would have a child.
Yes.
She felt that very strongly.
Yes.
And you then felt it very strongly after she died that you should do that.
Yes, I did, because I felt, even though I was only 26, I thought, you know, that was considered old to have children then. The prima para, whatever they call it. But I also was starting to look at babies in prams. I've always loved babies anyway. I still love babies. Every time there's a baby around, I go and go cuckoo. And so I thought, yes, I want to have children, and I thought he would be, you know, the good father.
Did you enjoy being a mum to start
I
with?
loved being a mum, yes. And I gave up my career for several years and was a sort of full-time mum. In fact, there was, do you know Art Buchwald? Of course you do. Art Buchwald, the American writer. He wrote an article about me called A Most Peculiar Mother, because I was in St. Moritz with all the grand ladies in their fur hats and going out to lunch. And I schlepped my baby around in a basket because I didn't have a nanny. And all of the rest of them said, she's so weird. Why is she taking her baby around like that? But that's the side of me that people have always been surprised about.
See, I was surprised that you gave up your career at its peak, really, to be a mum for a while.
It wasn't its peak, no. It wasn't its peak. I never really... The peak really was Dynasty. Dynasty. There they are. Aren't they cute?
Never mind them. Look at you. My God.
Yeah, I was a yummy mummy, I guess.
You certainly were. Unfortunately, your relationship with Tony began to drift apart again. I mean, you've been through one divorce, which is obviously a chaotic marriage. You were very young. The second one, I would imagine, hurt you a lot more because you were older and probably didn't want to get divorced again.
I did not want to get divorced, no. I did not want to get divorced because of the children and because having had already one stupid juvenile mistake, I didn't want to have another. But unfortunately, Tony, I wouldn't say unable to commit, but quite commitment phobic in a lot of ways. And I think that came out in the movie that he made, which was semi-autobiographical, except it was more autobiographical than semi. That movie showed him, as the lead character, having non-stop series of affairs with women. And I realized that was our life. That's what his life was. And I couldn't accept that. And so at the age of, I don't know, 33, 34, whatever, I realized that I couldn't go on with that marriage. And as sad as it was for the children, and it was really sad for the children, and I knew they were, I think Sasha was 3 or 4 and Tara was 5 or 6. And so we left. I left Los Angeles. I left the beautiful house in Summit Drive with the parties and Sammy Davis and Paul Newman and all those people, Steve McQueen coming over. And I took the children and went to London. And it was a shock for them, you know, to go from the Beverly Hills life with the swimming pool and the dogs and the sunshine to come to London in the dank and the wet and the rain. And, I mean, I love London. I was brought up in that, but the children were, you know, American.
Did they ever blame you for leaving their dad or not?
I don't think... I think they might have when they were young, but I think they realised after they saw the movie that it really wasn't my fault.
I mean, people will look at the pictures of you there and knowing that you're very intelligent, you're very funny. I mean, you're almost the perfect woman.
I know.
Why would a guy...
And I can cook.
And you can cook. I mean, why on earth would he be a serial adulterer to somebody like you?
Because the expression, a leopard can't change their spots. And I should have known that before I went in. And he hinted at it, but he said he thought he could change.
It was back in London that your career took a bit of a back seat, but you're already plotting a return to the limelight.
By the time she reached her 40s, Joan found the parts drying up. You know, she couldn't play the juvenile lead anymore. She couldn't be the interesting older actress.
It just wasn't acceptable for women in their 40s to be thought of as being glamorous. They were chucked on the dung heap.
Just a few years before, she'd been starring alongside some of the Hollywood greats. Now it was more B-movie than A-list.
I mean, she's made some clunkers along the way. I think Empire of the Ants is right down there.
She was in a swamp, basically being eaten by giant ants. And she would send us photographs, Polaroids of her on the set being eaten by ants. And at the bottom of the Polaroid, it would say, "This is what your mother is doing to put food on the table."
But eventually, even the low-budget offers stopped coming in.
The situation got so bad that she actually signed on. So she would stand in her fur coat waiting to get her benefit. And to show her sense of humour, she once had a licence plate made for her car saying Joan who.
It was a family member who gave Joan some startling career advice.
Her father, Joe, made the serious suggestion, I think, that she perhaps ought to strip on screen.
And so strip she did in the 1978 film The Stud. And then again, a year later, in The Bitch.
It was soft porn. It really was just soft porn, and it was very brave. I thought it was very courageous of her to do it.
But I remember it being very shocking stuff. I worked with Oliver Tobias on the next film he did after The Stud, and he had a few stories to tell about Joan, which of course I'm much too ladylike to repeat.
It's never easy to watch your mother naked on a swing. You know, after the therapy, you move on, but...
I was taken aback because they're quite graphic, you know, and to see your mother commingling with a gentleman on the screen is an odd experience, you know.
Oh, but I bought these specially for you.
I was upset with it by it in a way I couldn't quite compute at that time. A kind of feeling in my belly of this is odd, this is off, this is not quite right, you know, and I don't like it.
Well, just for the record, I did like it.
Well, just for the record, I hated it. I hated doing those scenes. But this was a time when Jane Fonda and Glenda Jackson and Julie Christie were taking off their gear all over the place. Nobody said anything about them doing soft porn, but me, I got it from all sides. And...
Quite literally, from what I'm saying. Good old Oliver Tobias, eh? Were you and Oliver ever...
And absolutely not.
No
way. I have very, very rarely been with my leading men, no. I'm not keen on actors. I love actors. I love them. But I don't want to be with somebody who's fighting for the mirror. Don't. If somebody's going to be looking in the mirror, it's going to be me. I don't want to have to push that other person out of
I mean, despite the obvious fantastic impact on your career that it had, looking back, do you regret making The Stud?
Well, you know, I don't really regret anything, but I mean, now that I see how it upset my children, which I didn't realise at the time that it would upset them as much as it obviously did, yes, I suppose I do regret it. I mean, I certainly didn't get paid very much for it. I mean, pauper's wages, considering, you know, for an actor. But it did certainly have a certain resurrection in my career, which I think was one of the reasons that I got Alexis in Dynasty.
I mean, I read that Sacha's friends were sort of bringing pictures of you in to school and stuff. I mean, when you think back about the reality of him, he seemed... I mean, your daughter seems to think it was a bit of a laugh, but a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
He seems a little bit more affected by it at the time, perhaps, than you may have realised.
I think when I went to visit him at boarding school, and I said, "What are all those boys following you for, Sacha?" When we were walking around the grounds with one of the headmasters, and he said, "It's you. They're trying to get pictures of you and look at you." He said, "Because of those movies you've made, Mummy." I said, "I'm sorry, but, you know, somebody's got to pay the school fees," and I was basically the breadwinner, quite frankly.
I mean, that scene when you're swinging on the swing,
Yes.
I mean, when you look at it, do you feel ashamed,
No.
embarrassed,
Look
or...
at that body. You
That's
think
what
I'd
I
be
was thinking.
ashamed?
I was thinking that. I mean,
No way. And everyone say, oh, my God, she's over 40. Look at that body. Yeah. No,
I mean, how
was
old were you when you did those scenes?
I think 42, 43, somewhere like that. I
You
can't
did
remember.
look fabulous.
I know. Well, you know, I've never... I mean, like, yeah, I look fabulous there. I mean, there are times when I haven't. But I'm very able to look at myself objectively and say, yes, you look great. No, you looked horrible.
Have you enjoyed being a sex symbol?
If I enjoyed it, I guess I really sort of wasn't aware of it. It's only now, you know, some old guy will come up to me and say, oh, you know, you were my pin-up when I was in Korea, not Korea, the one after.
I was going to say, that is going back a bit.
Yes. When I did all those pin-up pictures, God, I've done a lot, I didn't really realise what they were for.
You see, I'm not sure I believe you. You were the sex symbol.
Well, you want me to spell this out in a crude way?
Yes.
That I thought that men would use those photographs in magazines for certain nefarious purposes.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that what they're for? I
No,
didn't
I've honestly
really...
no idea what you're talking about.
It didn't really penetrate. Oh, so you never did.
Anybody got any oxygen out there? Why did the roles dry up for you, do you think, around that time?
Because they dry up for all actresses over the age of 43, 44, particularly if you're good-looking. You know, if you're Olympia Dukakis, you can go on, and even Shirley MacLaine and lots of people. But if you are considered to be, you know, very attractive, it's very hard in that interim period. Once you get to a much older, so you can play the older mother or the older grandmother, then it's easier. But I think that if you are considered to be beautiful and sexy, and then you are in your mid-40s and pushing 50 or whatever, it's tough. That's why it was a miracle that I got Dynasty when I was 47.
I interviewed Cindy Crawford recently,
Yes.
who said the thing she missed most was the ability to walk down a high street and see every man's head turn.
Oh,
because
really?
she was no longer able to have that effect, even though she
Really?
looks amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
She said when she was 21,
Yes.
the roads would stop.
Yes.
Did you feel the same way? I mean, did you
No.
have that same thing?
No, I never missed that. I was rather pleased, actually. It's always a bit embarrassing.
What was it like for you to go to a job centre after all the success you'd had and all the stardom to then actually have to sign on?
Well, Piers, I've always believed that life is not a bowl of cherries. You know, I mean, it's a bowl of cherry pits. And the happy ever after syndrome, I was aware was just a fairy tale. And so when I got to the stage where I thought, I'm not desperate for money, but I did have the children, and I did have a certain lifestyle that I was trying to keep up. And Samantha Eggar, a fellow Hollywood actress, English, said, you know, go to the job centre. You know, you're entitled to get $100 a week. You know, you've paid your dues. So I went and I stood in the line, and I was catching very curious glances from everybody because I'd just come from opening a friend's shop. And I was also driving a Mercedes, a rather new one, which was
They're all thinking, what are you doing
full
here?
of flowers. And I was wearing this floral fairy frock, you know, floral frock with a raincoat over it. And the people were looking at me, and then I finally sort of got to the top of the queue, and the woman looked at me and she said, "Hey, didn't you used to be Joan Collins?" I said,
How did
yes,
you
I
feel?
still am." Embarrassed, because then everybody looked and they were thinking, and they were kind of poorly dressed, and I thought, I don't really need this $100 a week. I can survive, and I will survive. The doctor said, "This child is in a coma. She cannot hear you." I said, "Yes, she can."
So, Joan, you'd had a few lean years, but you were about to get the role that was to launch your career into the stratosphere. Despite the success of The Stud and the Bitch, by 1981, Joan was back on stage.
She was doing some kind of cheap equivalent of an Agatha Christie mystery play. And it wasn't going well, and the attendance wasn't very good, and she'd just broken her wrist, and she was trying to do the part with this broken wrist. It was all very difficult.
Just around the corner was the part that was to define her. She'd taken a call from the producers of a little-known US soap called Dynasty, who wanted her to spice up the show.
She's playing the lead role, and a lead role of a mean, sadistic, snarling, greedy bitch. And she loved it.
She's the only person at that time who could have played that part, I think.
At its peak, it was shown in 70 countries around the world and seen by 150 million people a week.
Well, I don't know how much Joan made, but whatever she made, she deserved it, because in my opinion, I think she made the show.
Certainly, at one point, she was earning $50,000 a week. She was the highest paid actress on television anywhere in the world.
Joan's private life had become a bit of a soap opera itself, and things between her and husband number 3, Ron Cass, weren't going well.
Unfortunately, what happened to Ron is that a recreational drug habit developed into something much bigger. Unbeknown to Joan, he wasn't looking after her finances in the way that she assumed was happening, and they just couldn't make the marriage work. She had to let him go.
Your relationship with Ron really floundered because of his drug problems, didn't it? When you were watching the video, I detected a real sort of sadness from you that he went down that road.
Well, it's extremely sad, you know, anybody that ruins their life by drugs. You know, I am so anti-drug. I mean, I've never taken, well, yeah, once somebody forced me to take some coke, and it was just so horrible, and I've never taken it. I've never taken drugs. I never believe in abusing myself like that, ever. And it was the thing that is so terrible, really, to me, shocking, is that there was a man who used to visit us, who was a friend, I thought, and I used to say, I just don't know what to do. You know, I don't know who's giving him this stuff. I know that he's got it, and he denies it, because, you know, anybody who's either takes drugs or is an alcoholic is in denial. They are in total denial, which, of course, I didn't realize. Anyway, it turned out that this man I'm confiding in was the pusher. Thank you.
When the marriage eventually ended and you got divorced, this is now divorce number 3.
Yeah, lovely.
And yet, as we've spoken to you about this, people who don't know you might think, oh, that Joan Collins, she's always getting married. Actually, when you go through each of the marriages, you know, you had a very abusive husband, you had a serial adulterer husband, you had a cocaine addict husband. I mean, you've had a lot of bad luck with these guys.
Yeah, I would say, yes. I mean, I've had a lot of good luck in my life, but, you know, maybe I was a bad picker. Not anymore, I've got the best.
I mean, do you blame yourself for anything that went wrong with these marriages?
Yes, I blame myself for being stupid enough not to see it beforehand. But, you know, I certainly, when I look back at the 17, 18-year-old girl that I was with Maxwell Reed, I was, as I said, I was just so innocent and stupid and foolish. I should have seen the warning signs with Tony when he said, well, you know, I do like other young girls, maybe I can't always be faithful. I should have walked away. But, you know, I've always believed that nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not. So, you know, you just hope that
I mean, your
things will.
worst selection by a country mile was this Swedish pop star, Peter Holm. I mean, I was in the newspaper game by then. We were like, what are you thinking, Joan?
I know.
What were you thinking?
What was I thinking? I don't know. I don't think I think I was right at the top of fame. I couldn't go anywhere without paparazzi, without people grabbing bits of me. I was being ripped off totally by several financial advisors and business managers and people. And this guy came into my life, and it seemed that he was, you know, gonna protect me and solve the financial problems. I don't know, Piers, it was idiocy.
What was the reality?
The reality was he had no conversation, and we bored each other to tears. And my interest was getting up in the morning at 5 o'clock, going to the studio and working all day and trying to spend some time with Katie, my daughter. The others were at boarding school by then. And there was very little time that we had between us. People don't realize, I know they think, oh, it's so glamorous being in a soap opera. And, you know, it isn't at all. It's terribly hard work. And on the weekends, you have to have fittings and do interviews and all those magazine covers. Those were done on the weekend. So basically, I had very little time at all to myself. In between, in the breaks, I made miniseries and movies of the week. I made Sins, which was an 8-hour miniseries one year. I made Monte Carlo the next. So I was working my ass off, actually.
I mean, let's just talk about Dynasty for a moment. Did you love the attention that came with the role of Alexis?
Yes,
magazine covers, you know.
One cannot deny that being on magazine covers and having loads and loads of publicity and having people very interested in you is a bit like a drug. You know that, because you've got it. And so, but at the same time, if you're smart like me, you know it's not going to last.
The best story I heard was that Larry Hagman has always really fancied you.
Really?
So we could have had JR and Alexis actually come together.
Yeah, I think so. I went out with him when I was at RADA. I was 16 and he was like 19, and he was in a chorus boy in South Pacific, and we went on a date together. He was so shy. It was amazing. Never believe it was Larry Hagman.
I think he says you were the one that got away.
Ah, well.
Now, this was quite a difficult period for you, because just prior to the Dynasty job coming your way, your daughter had a terrible car accident. Tell me what happened.
Well, we were in Paris. I was doing fittings for a play I was going to do with Tara. Tara was 16, and I was there with Ron Cass, and the nanny had lost where we were staying. This is before cell phones. And finally, we got the call at 2 o'clock in the morning that she'd been knocked down. She was in intensive care. Well, this was a call from my brother, and I was just in shock. And Katie was in intensive care, and they'd shaved her hair, and she was not in good shape, to say the least. And the doctors were not optimistic, and it was dreadful, because they would say terrible things like, oh, this child isn't going to survive. And I said, yes, she is. She is. How can you possibly think she's not going to survive? And they looked at me like I was insane. And I said, I'm going to stay with her all the time. They said, you can't stay with her. There's nowhere for you to stay in the hospital. I said, then we'll get a caravan and we'll stay in the parking lot, or I'll sleep in my car. So we rented a caravan, and we stayed in the car park. And I spent most of the day with Katie next to her, holding her hand and talking to her and talking about reading her poetry, reading her stories, talking to her. And the doctor said, this child is in a coma. She cannot hear you. I said, yes, she can. Anyway, Katie came out of the hospital, and she was lying in bed in the house in South Street that we lived in. And I was walking in and out and bringing things. And she suddenly opened her eyes and said, Mummy. Hello, Mummy. Well, that was the first time that she spoke. And it was quite amazing. Really very... because I knew she was going to get better. I just knew it. And I willed it. And she had a very strong will, and I had a very strong will. And between the two of us, we were invincible.
And in that time, when you didn't know whether she would come through or not, did you contemplate, I mean, you gave everything up for this period. If you'd had to, would you have just given up everything in that time for your daughter?
I would have.
Because I get the feeling you would have done. Otherwise, why would you have got this trailer and sat there 24 hours a day?
Yes. No, I would have. She was, it's the mother lion, it's the lioness, you know, protecting your cubs at all costs. I had a similar situation with Sasha. He was very sick in hospital when he was like 4 or 5, And I slept on the floor of the hospital next to his bed, but that was only for like 2 days. My children have always been incredibly important to me, and I've always, you know, wanted to do whatever I can for them. I think it was the first time that I have got married that I really felt, yes, this is really, really going to work.
How hard is it, do you think, these days, for women to get on in Hollywood if they're of an advanced era?
You mean older women?
Yeah.
Oh, it's terribly hard. It really is. I have so many friends out there, and they all say the same thing. Even Shirley MacLaine, who is like one of the top stars, won God knows how many Oscars, even she said, it is hell for women in Hollywood now. There are no roles. My agent said to me the other day in Hollywood, I said, there's a lot of pilots being made. He said, I know. I said, well, what's in them? He said, well, no woman's role over the age of 45. I said, what about the mothers? He said, the mothers are 45.
Really?
So, yes, it's terribly ageist.
What kind of script attracts you these days, after being offered so many over the years? Any
Anyone
script?
that's going to pay.
Do you need to work for money, or do you
Yeah.
do it for fun?
Yeah.
You need to.
Yeah, I do. We've got, you know, I could say, well, let's not have a house in, you know, the south of France and one in London and one in LA.
But you like it.
It's been my life. It's always been traveling. I'm a gypsy, and I love to go there and be there. I can't think of, really, if people say, settle down. That's an anathema to me. I don't want to.
So 7 decades on from your showbiz debut, where is there left for Joan Collins to go? Joan shows no sign of letting up, and has recently enjoyed yet another renaissance with roles in Miss Marple, Footballers' Wives, and her one-woman stage show.
As proof of the fact that this woman is completely indestructible, one of her party pieces is to stand up and do the splits. And you sort of think your eyes water, but hers don't.
Joan at the drop of a hat will do the splits, you know. I mean, she's it's amazing.
But surely there has to come a time when the age-defying star finally calls it a day.
Mum will never hang up the makeup bag. Are you crazy?
Joan will never retire. Joan will go on and on and on because she not only loves it, but she needs it.
I'm very glad she's still going, because that means there's still a chance for me.
She will not give up till she drops dead.
I once said to her, Joan, don't you wake up just some mornings and say to yourself, oh, God, I've got to be Joan Collins all over again. And she looked at me in blank astonishment and said, are you mad? I love being Joan Collins.
Perhaps the 70-something's greatest achievement to date is that at the 5th attempt she's finally, fingers crossed, found Mr. Right, theatre impresario Percy Gibson, born the same year as her son.
I thought to myself, wow, she's a person that somebody could really, really like. So I definitely had an immediate sense of simpatico with her. And I think she did with me too. She immediately started giving me a hard time, so I knew that I was okay with her.
Married 5 times. Well, you know, there's a lot of people who would say that that's a negative thing, but I think that she's worked on it and she's gone through the good, the bad and the ugly, mostly the bad and the ugly, until she's got to the point where she's found, you know, her nugget of gold.
If you have to get used to, you know, seeing both of your parents naked on film, after that, having a stepfather that's younger than you is a walk in the park, you know, it's really not that strange.
So is Percy the one?
Oh, without question. He is the one I've been waiting for all my life. I know this sounds cliched, but he is so wonderful. He is so kind, he's funny, he's caring, he is fantastically intelligent and clever. He's just perfect. Perfect Percy, he is. And, you know, I've kissed a lot of frogs. And I found my prince.
You certainly have. I mean, how long have you been with Percy now?
It's 8 years on Wednesday.
Is it really?
8-year anniversary, yes.
How did you first meet?
We met at Rizzoli's bookshop in New York. I was signing a copy of my book, and I was going to go on to San Francisco to do a play called Love Letters. And my PR said, I want you to meet the two young men who are, the producer and the stage manager. So we went over, and I met the stage manager, and I said, you look a bit young. And the other one, who was the producer, said, what about me? And that was Percy. And I said, oh, you'll do. And we went around, we went on tour, and we became very good friends. And then it just happened that every time I was in Hollywood, he was there, he was doing a play, or I would be in London, and he would be here on his way to visit his mother. We saw each other a lot.
A lot of cynics at the time said, oh, this will never last,
Yeah,
because of the
well,
age
sad
difference
for
and so
them.
on. Yeah, I mean, do you feel like,
No.
I told you?
No, I didn't. I don't feel like that because, I'm not much of a one for tit for tat. I knew. I really knew this time. I think it was the first time that I have got married that I really felt, yes, this is really, really going to work.
Did you ever imagine retiring?
Retiring? What's that mean?
I couldn't imagine you retiring.
No. Could you imagine retiring?
No.
No, exactly.
Nothing more boring.
No, horrible. What do you know that people who retire, normally they only live for a couple of years.
And that's true, isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely true. No, I will never retire. I mean, even if it means, what, if I don't get any more acting work, then I will write. I love writing, I write a lot of articles. And then I could go and open a shop and sell my things.
Well, Joan, I think I speak on behalf of everyone. We don't want you to retire.
Oh.
Ever.
Thank you, Piers.
Because you brought so much pleasure to us
Thank
for such a
you.
long time.
Thank
So thank you very
so
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Tomorrow at 6:45, Tom is shocked by the rather relaxed way his father's been running the GP surgery and looks to straighten things and him out. James Bolam and Michael French star in Series 1 of Born and Bred. Next tonight, Rising Damp. DFS